I'm Chad Ruthermond.
And I'm Andy Kinnick.
And welcome to NOCLIP Pocket. Nilbog is goblin spelled backwards. And today, we're going to be talking about Chop Goblins, a game that was released in 2022 and was published and developed by David Szymanski.
For Windows.
Sorry. It's also for Windows.
But first, if you can give us a like or a rating, it would be greatly appreciated.
So, Chop Goblins is a game that you can't say without enunciating the first syllable like you're being shot in the face. And is also a first-person shooter made in the what is now referred to as the boomer shooter style. It takes direct design inspiration from games like Quake and Unreal. And it's a game that we aren't going to take very seriously because it very obviously is not meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
So Chop Goblins is like the game itself is obviously sort of a joke. But to me, the thing that I find most interesting about Chop Goblins is how actually seriously the design was taken. And I'm sure a lot of the work that went into it is the same work that went into making Dusk, which Szymanski also developed. But the fact that there's like different enemy types that'll like there's some that are melee and some that are projectiles and some that are hit scan and force you to either take cover or do the arena shooter thing where you move in a circle is very interesting to me. It's a game that I thought was going to be so pointlessly silly, and yet it still feels like it has a good core to it.
Yeah, no, it is actually good. I would compare it to something like Jazz Punk, where that was very much a humorous game, but it kind of falls more on the side of like a game that was trying to mostly just be silly, and like this is a game that's like silly, but like I think mostly is just a good game,
right?
If that makes any sense. And it is surprising. Like, when you start it out, it's just kind of like you're stabbing goblins, and you're like, this is what I signed up for. But yeah, you get sucked in.
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty fun.
Yeah, it definitely is a game that does not have any false promises. When you pick up the game Chop Goblins, you know what you're in for the most part. But it has like a surprisingly solid base behind it. The game itself, I don't know if this is really the right thing to open with, but I'm going to, because it's what the game chooses to open with. When you boot the game up, you're on the main menu, and it has the most, like, just ostentatious Halloween, like, haunted maze-ass music that plays. And all of the music throughout the entire game just cracks me the fuck up. Like, it's so good in how goofy and silly it is. And I don't genuinely know where it came from. Like, I don't know if it was composed specifically for the game or if it was taken from somewhere. Both are kind of funny to me in different ways.
I'm pretty sure David Szymanski himself composed the music.
Okay. Very impressive, honestly.
Yeah. No, it also, I think, like lots of things in this game, rides the line just right. Where it, like, is silly, but it's also, like, pretty good, too.
Yeah. I will throw out that the music that plays in the streets level is it gets on your nerves very quickly, but it is also hysterical, because it's just like a weird, like, 80s roller skating at the mall in leg warmers while listening to Duran Duran kind of track.
Uh-huh.
Not that it sounds anything like Duran Duran. It's just what would be playing if you were listening to Duran Duran.
I think Chop Goblins would be my favorite game ever made if Duran Duran composed a song for it.
Yeah, that's probably true. It would be my favorite game ever made if it actually came out in like 1993.
Right, and it was like a full-length game.
I'd be like, damn, Chop Goblins way ahead of its time. Yeah, it's just the presentation of the game is so amusing to me that that it just lands in the way that it should land. The goblins themselves are very silly. The sound is designed in that way where, like, you have these goofy fucking tracks playing. Meanwhile, all of the goblins are yelling stupid quips at you with, like, no cooldown in between at all. There's just, like, hundreds of lines of dialogue happening at all times. It's just a real cacophony of ridiculousness.
Yeah, and I feel like the visuals too, like, land just right, where they feel natural and not just like a gimmicky cash grab.
Yeah. Yeah, they give it like a... It feels very genuine for the era that it's emulating.
It definitely feels like something that I would have played in 1990, whatever, 8.
It is a... Yeah. It is so painstakingly silly in a way that is really amusing. And the focus, I think, is on the goblins themselves. So I think we should maybe talk about their design a little bit. There's like several different flavors of goblin that you encounter throughout the game. The basic, they are the Chop Goblins, which means that they all have some kind of cutting implement, mostly cleavers.
Yeah, that's what like the basic ones have.
Yeah, and then there's ones that throw them at you. There are ones that that have cutting words that yell at you and are modeled after like a old mom.
Yeah, I thought that was so clever because like it took me a minute to get it. Like that, like they're the hit scan enemy, but they're like yelling insults at you.
Right.
Like there's something about that felt really like intuitive somehow. Like the fact that they were just yelling words at me and that's what was damaging me. Like I don't know, I just thought that was a really, really creative take on a hit scan enemy.
Yeah, and to me it feels like I don't know, like, because some of the ones that they yell, like, I think they scream at you to, like, get a haircut, and, like, some things that are more generalized, but I know that, like, a few of them are just, like, boring. I feel like that's, like, something that David Szymanski himself has heard from critics about his games, and is like, now you get to be this old mom lady.
Right.
Yeah, and then you have the ones that are not goblins, like the weird cats.
Oh, yeah. Those things.
I don't understand
why. I thought they
looked
like dogs.
They do look like dogs, but I think they're described as cats.
Okay.
I might be wrong about that. That pounce at you, and to me were like the deadliest enemies in the game.
Yeah, they were the kind of, like, punish you for freaking out kind of enemies.
Yeah.
Because, like, they didn't actually take that many bullets to kill. But they felt like they did.
Right.
Because you were just like, oh!
And you end up missing half your shots. Yeah. And then the big giant goblins.
Right,
I don't know
that
what
throw
those
the
are
axes.
called. Yeah, that throw big axes at you. Those ones are one of my favorite enemies because they say all the same dialogue as the regular ones, but in a real deep voice.
Right.
So, like, a regular goblin would come around the corner and be like, aha, nice to meet you. And then one comes in and like, oh, nice to meet you. And it's just real funny because they don't show up until the end of the game. And so you get a nice contrast there.
Right.
Then, of course, they do reskin the throw goblins into the space goblins at the end with the lightsabers.
Yeah, the future goblins.
Yeah. But they're largely the same.
Yeah, and then there's also, like, flying goblins for 1 second.
Oh, yeah, they're there for, like, about a second.
Yeah, like on broomsticks or something. They're playing broomstickers.
Of course, yeah. And then there's the game's one actual boss, which is Dracula, which we'll get to. We'll just talk about Dracula when we talk about Dracula's castle.
All right.
Which you haven't played the game yet. You're probably like, that's a little strange. Not that anything that we've said so far has been particularly pedestrian, but...
Right.
Yeah, so it's like, to me, it feels like the goblins were very much designed. It almost feels like the Chop Goblins name and theming, which doesn't really theme the game itself, just the enemies more than anything else, comes from their, like, designing the shooter engine and then saying, like, what's a good enemy? And then you make the visual design of an enemy that's, like, small body, that moves pretty fast, but has this giant head, which is a very targetable body part. It just feels like they fit very naturally into it because it feels like they were sort of designed into the game rather than being like, what should the Chop Goblins look like? It's like, what should we call the game now that I've put Chop Goblins in it? I don't know if that's really true,
Yeah.
but that's just how it feels.
No, I mean, I wouldn't disagree with that. Because I was going to say, like, it feels like it had to have been that the goblins were designed first, and the game is designed around it. But you are correct. Like, you play in a museum, and then some city streets, Dracula's castle, and Rome,
yeah,
and then the future. So they're not really themed around goblins, other than maybe the spooky castle.
But the spooky castle is also specifically themed around Dracula.
Right? So yeah, it is interesting. But yeah, like they're obviously like the focus. So maybe it's just like a joke that they're throwing into just a regular or like a game that doesn't have anything really to do with goblins otherwise.
Yeah, though I don't know if you had the Chop Goblins. You're a designer. Think about this. I'm putting you on the spot here. If somebody handed you the Chop Goblins as depicted in Chop Goblins 2022, not to be confused with Chop Goblins 1985, what would you just imagine a level that a Chop Goblin would feel natural in?
I feel like you got to go like kind of Dragon's Lair-esque.
Oh yeah.
You start maybe like in a haunted forest, comes to a castle. You gotta have a dungeon area, stuff like that.
It's like goblin stuff.
Yeah, like goblin stuff. Just goblin on down.
You're right. In fact, now that you say haunted forest, that feels like such a natural fit that I've now talked myself into. They definitely just put the goblins in after, because they feel very. To me, it feels like they would be very natural coming out from behind trees and going chop chop chop.
Yeah.
But now they're not there. They're instead in Rome.
Imagine them dropped into I don't know why this just came to mind. They're dropped into this surreal forest area. You run around in Fatum Bachelum or something. Don't they feel right at home?
They really do, yeah. And they seem like the kind of thing that would be perceived as a threat in that game.
Yes.
So that does seem also pretty appropriate. Wow, what a sobering realization about Chop Goblins. But regardless of the fact that they don't seem like they fit in the game that they're in, I do love it. I really like how just outlandish it is, and the fact that there is a mismatch almost makes it seem better to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I legitimately think it's probably intentional.
Right. I mean, it's definitely intentional vis-a-vis the final product.
Right.
There's no, they probably did things to make it even less appropriate over time just to make sure that the joke hits home. It's just a very amusing sort of thought experiment there, because the Chop Goblins feel like they're so out of place in any situation, really.
I mean, even the narrative, the little narrative you get at the beginning, it's just you decide to check out, try to loot a museum, and you find a mysterious box, you open it, and release the Chop Goblins.
Right. It's funny, because, there's it's not even implied that you, work at the museum.
No, it specifically says you break into it.
Yeah. It just sort of casually.
Yeah.
That you do this. And, even there's, an employee-only section of the museum that you have to find a key for that you would totally know. I'm reading too much into the mechanics of Chop Goblins right now. But yeah, it is set up in such a way that so as to make you go, this game does not exist for it to make sense.
Right.
Which we need more of, I think. I think more games like Chop Goblins would really hit the spot.
Yeah, I was thinking, it almost has a kind of appeal that in other mediums that have a much lower barrier to entry, you can get weird, surreal, or off the wall short films or short stories or etc., or weird art, whatever. It's way harder in video games, way bigger time investment. Usually need people to invest money in the game, and they don't want you to make something called Chop Goblins. So, yeah, no, I also wish we could see more stuff like this.
Yeah.
It is just, very wacky and, unique and, the kind of thing that it only takes, an hour to 2 hours to beat it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just it's a fun experimental thing to go through.
It makes me feel like we should start a game publishing company and only accept people who offer us bad ideas. We reject anything that seems like it's too good of an idea.
I don't know about that.
All right.
Weird ideas, not bad ones. Some bad ones, but they have to meet a certain set of criteria.
Yeah, we'll talk about it at the next board meeting.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Next stockholders meeting.
Yeah. We're going to go public immediately because we don't actually have any money. So we would not be able to execute any ideas. Anyway, yeah, that's why Chop Goblins doesn't make any sense.
So do we want to talk about the levels in the game as they are?
Yeah, I think we should.
So yeah, you start out in the museum, and I actually think that's like a fun place to start. Even though, yeah, like we just described, doesn't necessarily make any sense that it's goblins in the museum. But like it almost, not that I've ever seen this movie, but it kind of has like Night at the Museum vibes. Like you stay overnight in a location and like a museum, and something mysterious and magical happens when it's shut down for the night. Somehow kind of works.
I will say that my enjoyment of the game gets even greater if I imagine that
Ben Stiller
is
Wilson.
the main character. Yeah. It could be fun. I agree. I also think that the museum is probably the locale that makes the most sense, just because of the little blurb they put at the beginning.
Yeah.
And it is good. It feels very natural in terms of like all of these levels to me seem to represent not like eras or anything, but just like tropes in the first person shooter genre. And like Old Museum is like a classic. Like you go through places that are just like Old Museum in tons of old first person shooter games. It's just like got that kind of energy to it. You can put in lots of like mysterious looking old artifacts and stuff and give everything a little bit of gravitas. And I also like the fact that the game has little secrets and collectibles. As far as I know, there's really no reason to get any of them. But it is like interesting, in an area like museum gives you a lot of well-explained nooks and crannies to look through to find those things. So I think this level does work in a very traditional sense. That's it.
Yeah, I was just thinking the whole time whether or not I was going to come across like a shop or something to spend those coins in. But as far as I know, you never knew.
Yeah. You asking about it was, no joke, the first time that I ever thought about them having a use.
It's because they're specifically coins.
Right.
Like, if they were like anything else, I probably also wouldn't have like thought anything of it.
Right. If you were picking up jiggies or whatever, it would be... you would just accept it as a collectible because they're coins, and there's a big coin version of it that
and
increases your count
like
by
you
10.
picked up a chop coin.
Yeah.
You know?
I was like, what do I do with the chop coin? Maybe there is something to do with the chop coin, and I just didn't find it.
Like, as soon as you said they're just for completion or whatever you said, I was like, oh, that's probably correct. that seems like it's probably the case in this very short game.
True, yeah. Be cool, though.
Yeah.
Maybe in some future DLC.
Yeah, so the second level is just the city streets.
And
I found it transition to that level to be pretty jarring.
Yes.
Like you just walk out into the outside and it's like, oh no, they chopped the building down.
Chopped out. That is so funny.
It is very funny, but like I expected to be able to go back into the museum after leaving it. You know, I didn't know it was the second level. So yeah, I just thought that was like very like a weird transition.
Yeah, I had the exact same experience the first time I played the game because I was looking for the key to the area.
Exactly.
And I walked out the door and it just ended the level. So that was a bit surprising. And yeah, going into the city street level, they chopped down the building after seeing a building like being demolished was just great because it's just non-diegetic text essentially that appears on screen, and it's like, oh no, they chopped down the building. But then it does go on to be like probably my least favorite level in the game, just because it feels very straightforward compared to the rest.
Yeah, it almost feels like an interstitial rather than its own level.
Right. But it does have that jammin' 80s theme.
Right.
And a part where you shoot a car full of goblins and it explodes.
Yes.
All of which is fun to do.
Can't disagree with that.
Yeah. It is the first level where I was like, oh shit, I can't jump in this game. It feels like such a weird... Like, I understand the choice because of the era of game it's trying to emulate, but it feels weird to have a game where you can't jump after you've been playing games where you do jump for basically your entire life.
Yeah, no, that was the level where I was like the most convinced that I probably was able to jump and just didn't know how.
Right.
Because like there were a couple of instances where it really seemed like I should be able to, but you can't.
Yeah. A lot of secrets are just placed up on things, and you have to figure out ways to get to them. This is definitely the level that is also most ripe with that. So, rife even, but regardless. So yeah, it's pretty, it's a lot like that level.
And then the next one's the Dracula's Castle.
Right.
Which I think is like the best designed level, personally.
I would agree. It's kind of got that like Dark Souls interconnectivity to it. This is kind of like the Dark Souls of David Szymanski games.
Because it's got goblins in it?
Because it has goblins in it. And you sometimes loop back around to where you started.
We all do know that Dark Souls invented shortcuts in video games.
Yes, correct. So yeah, I felt very at home, with that that Soulsian design. No, yeah, I really like the layout of this level. I like the fact that it is possible to get lost, but never for so long that it gets frustrating. So you do get to just sort of like bomb around and do your thing. It's got a classic keys puzzle where you pick up the masks and put them in a thing to open a door to the next part of the level.
Classic me thing. I feel like I did not grow up with first-person games. I merely adopted them. I was not born in them. But I feel like I often stand too close to things to interact with them. This bit me in the ass in Realms of the Haunting with the chalice to like throw water on stuff. Like I was like walking right up to it and it was like, well, can't I interact with it? Yeah. So I walked right up to the thing to put the masks on, and I was too close to the wall, and I just clipped right through the bridge as it like went up.
Right.
And then like the second time, it's like you can just interact with it like from like the middle of the room. I was like, oh.
Yeah, the interaction in the game is extremely odd, just generally. Just to take a moment to talk about it, like it does follow that like a more modern first person shooter like. Press E to interact with stuff is like your main way of doing anything that with the environment. Older games probably would have just had you shoot whatever it is that you were looking at.
Right. Or open an inventory and click on a thing.
Right, yeah. So in this case, you do actually just like use E, but it also stabs things. Like you have a dagger as your only weapon at the beginning. We'll talk about weapons. We can do that now too if you want. But, yeah, so you pick up a dagger at the beginning, and then from that point on, you can always dagger things, including projectiles. I got this to work, like, once. It's fucking really hard to do, or at least I never really got the timing quite down, but it is cool that that's in there. But it just made me stab everything in the game. Like I would go around and be like, can I interact with this thing? And then you stab it. It's like, can I break it?
Yeah, it changes the reticle if you can interact with it.
Yeah, but it is kind of subtle.
I did the same thing.
Yeah, you just gotta stab all the stuff. And I was always disappointed when there was like a prop in the environment that I couldn't break with the knife.
Right.
Because you can break a lot of stuff. And you can interact with a lot of stuff. Like in Dracula's Castle, you can drink wine and eat grapes off the table to get health. Which is fun. But yeah, so Dracula's Castle is a bit more maze-like, a bit kind of Doom-y.
Yeah,
is how I would
it's
describe
a little
it.
figure eight-esque. Like, you'll go down one way and then, like, come up on the other side, you know?
Yeah, it's got
Like,
multiple elevations to it, which is
yeah.
cool. But then you end up fighting Dracula, and it's so fucking jarring in this game to fight Dracula when you've been fighting the Chop Goblins up until then.
Right. Yeah, I thought he was going to be the final boss.
Right,
Because
yeah.
it's so, like, different. Yeah, the thing that sucks about the Dracula fight is that if he kills you, you get to do the whole level over again.
Right, the game does not have checkpoints, so you just start back over every time that you die. In each level, not like the whole game, but yeah. Yeah, that is the part that sucks about Dracula. He's very much like the one part of the game where the strategy really is just like run in a circle, because they give you like tons of ammo in the room, so you just have to like keep shooting constantly, and he sings the whole time, which is real weird and has no real explanation for
Yeah,
it.
he just sings along with the music in the level.
But like on a very different audio layer. It's very funny and something that I thought was great, and then I died to him once, and then did not find as funny the second time. But you know, it's still a good choice, I think.
Yeah.
You pass from Dracula's castle into Rome. This level also a little bit of the Dracula's castle vibe. It's more expansive. It's less vertical, but it still has some verticality. It has fucking like launch pads as a mechanic, which was pretty weird.
Yeah, because they're only in like 2 rooms.
Yeah.
It had one of the things I found the funniest in the game, which was like right when you start that area, like you can walk off to the side and like see like a beach, and like the water and sky look like they're from a different game. Like they look like very pretty.
Yeah.
And then like you just like turn a little bit to the right, and it's like the N64 PS1 era textured walls.
The real harsh angle cutting into the sand. Yeah. It is extremely jarring, and it's funny because like the beach is like treated as like it's like the secret beach, but like everyone's gonna go look at the beach, and it's got, you know, ammo and shit on it for you to pick up.
Yeah, I think Rome is definitely my second favorite level. Like it's a little bit more like spread out than the castle level. But yeah, it does have some interconnectivity and like some secrets to find. You know, it's just like a solid level, and it looks cool.
Yeah. I just realized that because the plot of this game involves time travel, that when you go from... So the first part of the game is in the present day. Like you go from the museum to the streets, and that's all in the same time period. But then you do go back to the past,
right?
For Dracula's castle. So that is a castle past,
of course,
and therefore we do love it.
We do have one castle past.
Yeah, we stand a castle past here on the NOCLIP podcast. Go listen to the Rascal episode if you're like, what the fuck are they talking about? Yeah, and so going even further then into the past to Rome, it does. I like the way that they modeled everything. To me, it feels like it's a bit of a rip at Serious Sam, which always had it was Egyptian specifically in that one, but like it had like the wide open skyboxes, and it's just like it's this kind of a game. It feels like that's where the inspiration came from here. But yeah, I did love it as well. I thought it was great. It also has sort of a mini boss fight in the form of the like 3 giant ones that you fight in the big arena. Not nearly as difficult as a Dracula.
Yeah, I don't know if I just got lucky on that one, but I just kind of like moved a little bit to the left and was just able to stand behind a pillar and kill them like almost effortlessly.
No, that's exactly the kind of strategy that I think should work here. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's just a good time.
Yeah, and so when you get to the end of this level, you get this magic wand, which is like a big fucking explosion weapon.
Yeah, it's the BFG of this game.
I found it like strangely hard to aim.
Yeah. We can talk about... Let's take this opportunity to talk about weapons, but let's start with this wand.
Yeah, so I found myself... I feel like the game intended me to use it much more than I did.
Yes. And you know that because they put wand charges all over the place, like the
Yeah.
ammo for it, and I always was full, essentially, because I
Yeah.
was hesitant to use it.
It was hard. It was easy to miss with it, which felt bad.
Right. It's so strange because like the weapon, when you have a BFG weapon, you want to like point it at a guy and him to vanish from existence. And with this weapon, it's like it seems to affect. I imagine it's a cone is the idea, like it goes in front of you and then spreads out a bit, or possibly it is just a cylinder of pain.
Yeah, or like an area of effect. Like it hits one thing and then
chain reacts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was never 100% clear on it. Because they give you that big crowd of goblins to try it out on.
Yeah.
And I got like a third of them maybe.
Yeah, I think I got most of them, and then it was like, oh, now there's like 3 of them. I guess I'll switch to a different gun.
Yeah, I'll pull out
Shoot
the
them,
other
yeah.
guns.
So, but yeah, it feels like you're supposed to walk out there and blast them all at once.
Right. But you just can't.
Yeah.
Or if you can, neither of us figured it out.
Yeah.
So it does feel a little bit strange. It fits the power weapon sort of like paradigm a bit, just because of the sound it makes. Like it's like a thunder crash sound. And is very impressive to use. And it is also very good to kill like the big things because you can just hit them twice and they die and you're not going to miss those.
Yeah, and it also felt like a joke when you walk into the room with like the final boss or like the big face.
Yeah.
You just blast it with that and kill it in one hit. I was like, oh, that's the end.
Yep, and then it plays the riveting end theme music that is the same as the main menu music. And is very funny. Yeah, and then the last level is the space level. Weirdly, I don't have that much to say on it. It's kind of just like, it's a level with a lot of guys. It's got a bit of the maze elements from the Dracula's Castle level, a little bit of the verticality. There's like a few floors that are multi-layered.
Yeah.
Which is nice. It does feel like a culmination, but because it's a culmination, it doesn't do anything that's particularly new.
Yeah, and it's a little shorter as well.
Yeah. So it leaves an impression, but it's not the level that would be a good exemplary level of the game.
Yeah, it feels a little bit of a mix between Tron and Star Wars, I would say.
Yeah, that's aesthetically about it, I would say. The dudes with the space goblins.
Yeah, look like Tron.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they wield lightsabers.
Yeah.
Or light hatchets, whatever. But yeah, I do want to talk about the weapons at least briefly before we end, because that should be an important part of the discussion of any first-person shooter.
Yeah, you got your classics.
You do have your classics.
Like a pistol, a shotgun, an automatic weapon, and a big fucking gun.
Yep. And those are them. The things that I found interesting about it were the choice of weapons, like the weapon type versus how that weapon actually performs. Like the knife works similarly to the way that melee weapons work in FPSs often. So that one's not too divergent, but the pistol is a flintlock pistol. It has an incredibly long reload and one bullet in it. Like you just have to reload after every shot that you make. But it is like a very strong weapon. Like it deals a lot of damage. Meanwhile, the shotgun fires very fast and is pretty weak. Like its purpose is for like crowd control, which makes some sense with a shotgun, and it's more likely that it does more damage in most games.
Yeah, that's more realistic to real shotguns.
Yeah, a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you can actually deal maximum damage, or at least close to it, from further away than you would think.
Yeah.
And then your automatic weapon in this case is the stake gun from Quake, essentially.
Yeah, it had a funny name in this, but I can't remember what it was.
It's called the Impaler. Like it had like a long name.
Oh, because it was in Dracula's castle, like Vlad the Impaler.
Right, but then Vlad was its nickname.
Right.
Yeah. And then the wand is your last one. So that one does work like a traditional power weapon, and the automatic weapon works like the chain gun from Doom, essentially. But to have the sort of the pistol and shotgun roll switched a bit was fun for me, at least. I like the fact that there was a difference.
Yeah. I it got to like surprise me a little bit, like in the castle level with the flying enemies, because like I was trying to shoot them with Vlad.
With Vlad,
because that's just like the thing I'd been using the most in that level, and it was really difficult to do. And then like I switched to the flintlock pistol, and it was like way easier. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. The first gun I got still having some utility.
Always nice.
In the third level.
Yeah. There are also like secret weapon upgrades. I think I found one in each playthrough, but I think they were different. The one that I got most recently was like a speed loader for the pistol, so it loaded faster. I'm not sure where the other ones are. I didn't even see them as far as I know.
I did not find any.
Yeah. I know that you can get the impaler in the streets level if you do a puzzle and get to a secret zone.
Yeah, I figured the streets did seem like they had a lot of secret areas.
Yeah.
That I did not find.
And most likely that is where at least one other upgrade is. But yeah, that's the weapons of Chop Goblins.
I am a little surprised you didn't chop any goblins.
That's true. I mean, unless you count stabbing goblins as chopping goblins, that seems pretty categorically different.
Yeah. That just would have been a cool moment to get to like chop a goblin's head off or something.
What if at the end of the game, the way that you beat the final boss, which was not a boss, it was just a hologram of
like
a face,
guillotine.
Yeah, you had to chop the goblin.
Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, David, get a hold of us. I'll send this copy of the podcast just to him,
right, so
that he can make corrections before we put it out. Hey, Andy, do we have goblin thoughts?
My goblin good thoughts.
Do you have any chop thoughts?
My chop thoughts are my goblin good chop thoughts are this game is a cool game.
What are we talking about next time?
Yeah, like we talked about some of David Szymanski's games before, and I think a lot of things apply, even though this one is funny, and most of his other games are kind of spooky or creepy. Yeah, it's like a short game that has like a lot of creativity and interesting ideas in it. And I kind of got into Final Thoughts territory there in the middle of the episode, but like I wish that was more common. But I completely understand why it isn't. Like David Szymanski's games feel like every once in a while you'll see like an interesting student project or something, or like a really high-end game jam game get shown off on a YouTube channel or something, and like his games feel like those, but like with more polish. Like they're just like really interesting bite-sized little games that I know at least we find super interesting. Like this is the kind of game that we always wanted to find when we would boot up Steam at like 11 p.m. On a weekend when we were hanging out or whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's funny. But it also like takes its core game design like seriously, and it's just like a good fun game as well. Yeah, I don't know. I guess there's not too much more to say about it than that. Then I really appreciate it for being a weird experimental little game.
Yeah, I agree with most of that. I would say. I think I've been a fan of David Szymanski for a while. I know there's a lot of developers like him, like single people making games that are on the smaller end, but I think that his aesthetic sense aligns very well with mine. I think I'm just attracted to a lot of his games because he seems to find a lot of the same things cool that I do. And so I picked up Chop Goblins pretty early on, and I put it on our list almost as a joke when I had first played it, because it is so short. And it kind of came down to it where we were just sort of like, let's find something short to do, and so it fit in, and I'm happy to talk about it. I do feel like one day we should talk about Dusk, because it is a very good game, and I think Dusk explains better why Chop Goblins is as good as it is, as it doesn't even necessarily deserve to be, just because the groundwork was laid so well in his previous game. So it's interesting, I guess, to sort of think about. This kind of a short game is always very appealing to me. Something that is just like a quick concept, something that has like a single or a couple ideas that it just sort of gets out the door so that you can experience it and talk about it and figure out like what it did right. And Chop Goblins is just, it's what it says on the tin, but it's also a little bit more than that. So yeah, I give it 1 surprisingly energizing tuna fish sandwich out of 1. Thank you for listening to NOCLIP Pocket this week.
What are we talking about next time?
Next time, we're talking about Chop Sora. I mean, we're talking about Kingdom Hearts 1. We're doing another epilogue episode, and this time I won't forget to intro it differently than the rest of the episodes. Yeah, so we're talking about Kingdom Hearts 1.
Yeah, I made Chad replay it.
And I said, let's use this. Let's not have me just play Kingdom Hearts 1 so that I have context. Mm-hmm. Let's also make it content.
Right.
Welcome to 2023.
I felt comfortable making you do it
mm-hmm.
because we're going to be talking about KH2.
Right.
And when we did KH1 like 6 years ago or whatever, you only played like a third of it.
Yeah, I played like 3 worlds.
And before that, you hadn't played it since 2002.
Right, I was a child the last time I had played it.
It seemed necessary.
Yeah, and it does seem necessary that we do an epilogue, so...
Yes.
So join us for that. Until that time, you can get a hold of us. All of our contact information is on our website at noclippodcast.com or on splattershot.pro. There you can find links to our email account, the YouTube channel. You can listen to any of our old episodes, including the one that we did on the other games of David Szymanski, or on...
Fatum
Bachelor and Realms of the Haunting. Mm-hmm. All great games in their own right, and questionable games in their
own right.
So, chop that like button.
Yep.
And chop that subscribe
Nothing
button,
else to be said.
And slap chop jaws in your comment section. Help, get me away. Help, take the microphone away from me. Don't let me talk anymore.
I'm just gonna let you drown.
It's a cool place. I'm gonna check the sound.
When they say it gets colder, bundled up now. Wait till you
get older.